Hello, Home Slices. It's Kiera with Home Slice Adulting coming to you all with my review for season 5. According to OWN's website, it's episode 506 of Iyanla Fix My Life, which is titled, let me pull up my notes really quickly. It is titled Crack Addiction, Abandonment, 7 Broken Brothers. This episode is about the Mitchell family that is in breakdown because of the events that have led up to today. So I am a big fan of when Iyanla does non-celebrity guests on her show because it adds an element of realness to the show that we don't necessarily see with celebrities. When we have celebrities on the show, they're invested in their public image. And Iyanla is not about that. Iyanla is getting down to the nitty gritty of what is going on in people's lives so that they can heal from it. So for me, when Iyanla has regular people on her show, it makes for a raw experience. It makes for better television, even though I believe that Iyanla is not in this whole situation, not into this for the whole television thing of it. And I feel like they have less investment in making things look good. And she can really help, people move on with their lives. There's just something very genuine and something that I like, and an edge that the show is given by people who are not famous. But moving on, we'll talk about how most of the brothers, or all of the brothers, were placed into foster care away from each other. One of the brothers was murdered in 2013, and one is incarcerated. We later find out that one of the brothers blames the other brother for the deceased brother's death. And one of their brothers named Monty, aka Murder, is doing 70 years in jail. I thought it was interesting. She asked if he was doing life in jail, and somebody was like, no, he's just doing 70 years. Nope. That's life, pretty much. But moving on, oldest brother Michael is mentally challenged. And we get to the point where he's telling the story of how Miguel died. It's not 100% coherent, but what I can gather from the situation is that they were on the street selling drugs, and Michael, the oldest brother, who is the mentally challenged one, was robbed by some other guys on the street because I guess they took advantage of the fact that he was mentally challenged. Michael told his brother Monty what happened, and Monty went down to try and, see what was up with the people who robbed his brother, even though Michael Jr. is the oldest. Because he's mentally challenged, they kind of view him as one of the younger brothers. And so Monty went to go see what was up with them, stealing from his brother, and ended up dying. And Michael was shot in the leg. So the brother that passed away, his name was Miguel. And Marcus, one of the other brothers, does not believe Michael's story, and he feels like that there's more to it. Now, according to another one of the brothers, Miguel was in the process of trying to bring the family together when he passed away. And after he passed away, things just kind of fell apart again. And y'all, my heart just like breaks for this family. Everything that happened in this family, like the odds were just against all of them. And so Iyanla had a point when she brought up that Marcus, the one that was mad about Miguel's death the most, there was something along the lines where somebody called Marcus to come down there so that they could go check, I guess, the person who had robbed Michael Jr. And so he said basically he had got his gun and went down there. And Iyanla was like, what was the point of that? And essentially what Iyanla was trying to say is, if you live by the na-na, you die by the na-na. somebody died, but it just wasn't the person that they wanted to die. And Iyanla's point is that you created a situation, you were living a lifestyle that caused you pain and trouble. I mean, that's what happens to people who live a life on the street. Sometimes they die. And, you know, somebody died, it just, you know, was the person that you loved. And so Marcus, you know, was saying that he tried to watch over his brother. He feels like he failed. And Iyanla is asking him, well, why can't you take that same feeling of protection and put it over your brother Michael? And he said, well, I can't see past my own pain. And Iyanla was like, that is a brilliant sentiment. I thought that was interesting too. I thought it was a little insightful. And he feels like, you know, he's a burden to the world, and he would have been okay dying in his brother's stead. And Iyanla was like, you have 4 children and you would have been okay with dying? And she addresses that, you know, the Black family has heritage in slavery, and that we have centuries of pathology going on in our lives, and she's here to interrupt the pattern. So next we see Marvin, who wrote to Iyanla. He thinks that the biggest issue that the family has is forgiveness. They talk a little bit about how the family was reconnected, that a lot of the brothers didn't know that they had other brothers until they were reconnected through the foster system. When he met his other brothers, Marvin said that he never got along with Marcus, and he feels like his brothers abandoned him when they ran away from the foster home that they were all in together, and they left him unprotected. So a dude that was too old to live in the foster home was re-invited back in because he was homeless, which is what happens to a lot of people when they are fresh out of the foster care system. And so his brothers ran away. They left him unprotected, is the way that he feels about it, which is pretty much the way it was. And the dude that, you know, returned to live there once he was an adult gave him gifts and whatnot, and he sexually assaulted Marvin. And I don't have any patience, nothing for nobody that touches children. It's the worst thing that you can ever do in the history of ever. It's terrible. It's the worst. It's just I don't have any words to describe how terrible, horrible, evil, disgusting it is for somebody to do that to a innocent little kid. I just don't have time for that. It's the worst. But Marvin says that he didn't stop his molester because he felt he had to pay the price of somebody being nice to him. And he uses sex to find love that his parents didn't give him. And he admits to being suicidal. And it's just, it's just crazy, the things that happen to people in these foster homes. I wish that the state would up their standards on what goes on in the foster homes. I don't know if I had mentioned this. When I did my review of the book that Tiffany Haddish wrote on her life, she was molested in a foster home as well. I feel like it's not a rare occurrence. And there needs to be some type of reform. But anyways, she gets all the brothers into the backyard. She wants them to build a shelter together, and they're already arguing, and Marvin is running away because whoever is trying to, you know, delegate roles piss Marvin off. And you know, Iyanla convinces him to return. And I think one of the things to highlight is that she told Marvin a way to go from being mad to rejoining the group. All you have to do is say, excuse me, I was having a moment. What do you need for me to do? And I think one of the things that one of the reasons that people hold on to grudges for so long is that they don't know how to fix it. And it's like, if you patch it up right away, it's a lot easier for you to fix than for you to hold on to something for a little while and come back and try to patch it up later. But moving on, they build something, and Iyanla tells them some of the things that they need to take away from the exercise is that they have all they need in each other. And so next we talk to Marcus, the feisty one, and he thinks that it's his responsibility to take care of his brothers. And he feels that Miguel, the brother who is deceased, paid the price for some of the bad behavior that he had in his life. And so Michael Jr. is mentally challenged because he was born addicted to drugs. I didn't really put two and two together on that. But one of the other brothers did mention that some of them were born with drugs in their system, or when they went into the state system, you know, the foster care system, that some of them had drugs in their system then as well. And so Iyanla makes Marcus admit that he left Marvin in the foster home. Marcus was under the impression that Marcus and some of the older brothers put so much fear in people at the foster home that they weren't going to touch Marvin, and that Marvin had this type of personality that nobody would harm him or anything, which was not true. And he blames himself, and he's taking responsibility for things that are beyond his control. And he said, well, the people who came before me, like his father and his older brothers, were incapable of taking on the responsibility of caring for their brothers. And, you know, he took that responsibility upon himself when he was 7 years old, when it really was not his job to look out for his brothers to the extent that he was trying, you know, wanted to look out for his brothers. And he feels like he failed them. And look where they are. They're dead. They're in jail. We can't get our relationship together. Everything about what he tried to do, he feels like he was a failure. And Iyanla pointed out that you're so busy beating yourself up about all the bad things that happen that you can't see the good that you actually did for your family. And so he has a lot of guilt. It must be a huge burden for him. And he has a hard time admitting that nobody gave him the appropriate tools to deal with those issues. And so he has to change his perspective, and Iyanla gets him to understand that his perspective needs to be different if he's going to do things differently from here on out. So lastly, we're going to talk to Michael Sr. And something wrong with Michael Sr. Something wrong with him. He's delusional. Okay. I don't mean to talk about nobody's daddy or nothing, but Iyanla was getting upset with him, and I got upset with him almost off rip, like almost immediately, because he said that their mother left. She was addicted to drugs. The children that she was having was addicted to drugs. So he was supposed to have known that she had a drug problem. And he was just clueless about the whole situation. Iyanla asked him, why did your wife leave you? Oh, I was cheating on her. Oh, I was doing this. Oh, I was doing that. But, you know, that's only if I had to guess. Well, Iyanla was like, well, did you cheat on her and run around on her and all that kind of stuff? And he was like, yeah, well, that's why she left. Like, let's not pretend like you don't know why she left. I mean, come on. But the thing that annoyed me the most is that he said when she left the kids with me. That seemed to be his biggest point of contention. And it's like, so you wanted a person who was addicted to drugs to take on the responsibility of caring for your 8 children, because it's 7 sons and 1 daughter. So you wanted her to take care of 8 children, the lady who's on drugs and who is continuously having babies that are addicted to drugs at birth. It bothered me that he felt like to me, it seemed like he felt like he was cheated out of the experience of having somebody else take care of his kids while he ran around and did whatever he wanted to do. That's the way I took it when he was like, why does she leave the kids with me? As if it's solely the mother's responsibility to take care of her children. There are a lot of women out here that are taking care of children by themselves, and I feel like he felt he was cheated out of the luxury of not having to deal with the issues of his children. Now, he was also in denial about his oldest son's mental issues. He never really understood or even talked to his son about his mental illness, or maybe about help that he could get him, the nature of his mental illness, what drugs were in his system that may have contributed to some of his mental issues and things along those lines. He was just delusional about the whole situation. And the only thing that he said that I felt were true was that the caseworker might have had it out for him. The little bit that I do know about the state system is that it shows favoritism to people who are not of color. People of color really get the brunt of what the state has to offer. They face harsher type of things that are going on. I mean, like, for instance, if you take a white woman who has children and then you take a person of color that has children, they could have similar situations, but more often than not, the children of color are the children that are going to end up in the foster care system because for whatever, they have like stricter restrictions on Black people, or they feel like Black people or Hispanic people, people of color, are less capable of taking care of their children. And so they get their children taken away from them more often than non-people of color get their children taken away. That's the way the state system works. That's the way every system in America works, is it does not show favoritism to Black people and or Hispanic people, and white people get the privileges that Black people do not. So when he said the caseworker had it out for him, I agree with that. I feel like that could definitely be true. And that, you know, they wanted to do psych evaluations. They wanted to put the children on drugs when the children were born on drugs, and he didn't want that. And so his children ended up being taken away from him. And I would imagine that it's hard to take care of that many children at once. So anyways, moving on, Iyanla is holding the man's feet to the fire, as he definitely should. The fact that he has 8 kids and the fact that the children are either in turmoil, dead, or spending a very long time in prison is very indicative of his, you know, parenting skills. He can admit that he failed as a father. It takes a little coaxing, but he admits it. And he feels like he can't have a relationship with his children because they're seeking vengeance for things that happen in his life. And Iyanla says, no, you put them in harm's way. Okay, you did all of these things to jeopardize a possible relationship with your children. And so, Iyanla was saying that things happened to your children while they were in foster care. Do you know any of it? And he's like, no, they didn't tell me anything. And Iyanla was like, well, the bigger question is, why didn't they trust you to tell you about what was going on in their lives so that you could fix it for them? And he was like, well, I would have done something. And she was like, well, you couldn't even put food on the table for him. So there's not much that you could have done. And I think that he just wants to move past the whole situation. But when you have 7 or 8 people that are all mad at you for doing the same thing to all of them, which is abandoning them, Iyanla says you have to get to the point where you allow them to beat you up, to get out, you know, not physically, but to get out all of the frustrations that they have against you. Listen to them, learn about how their lives were impacted in your absence, and then ask, oh, what can I do to make it better? I feel like a lot of people who have done a lot of wrong to a lot of people in their lives want to gloss over the details of what happened to these people after they were abandoned. And that's not the way that it works. You have to sit down and have a real conversation and let that person express everything to you about what they went through in your absence. And I think that that's what the family really needs, is for their father to just kind of be the pinata and let all of them have a whack at them and get all of their frustrations out. And once that's out of the way, then they can move on. So that's the end of the episode, y'all. So next time on Iyanla Fix My Life, the story continues. And Iyanla has the dad, Michael Sr., join the group with the rest of the men, because he didn't have a father in his life, and he's just like his sons who were abandoned by their father as well. And eventually the mother joins in as well. I thought the mother was Frankie. She looked very similar to Keisha Cole's mama. But that is the end of my review, guys. Please let me know your thoughts on this episode of Iyanla Fix My Life, which is involving the Mitchell brothers. I thought it was a very good episode. Again, I love when Iyanla talks about real people instead of celebrities. I understand that celebrities are better for ratings and for the show, but when she talks to real people, it just adds this layer of realness to the show, which I completely love. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this episode, and stay tuned, because immediately after this, I'm going to be doing my review for Real Housewives of Atlanta. It's been 2 weeks since we saw the last episode, so it's time to catch up with the girls. Peace out, home slices.